Hello guys, welcome to the Art Nest. As promised, the goal of this video is to teach you everything you need to land a job in the AAA video game, movie or publishing industry. So let's get started. Here is my promise for you guys today. By the end of today's presentation, you will know the universal and battle-tested formula to get a job in the industry. I will explain to you in a simple and accessible way, and for every step, you will have an actionable plan on how to do it. Also, I want to be clear. This framework I share with you today works for illustration, concept art, environment, characters, creatures, keyframe, animation, video game industry, movie industry, publishing industry, and any artistic job, even 3D and VFX if you transpose the core ideas to that medium. It worked for every pro who got a good career in the industry, whether it was done consciously or not. And I know this works because it got my career started back in 2016 while having no degree and having dropped out from art school 6 months before. And across 6 years of education, it got a lot of my students' careers started too, for companies which include Ubisoft, Dontnod, Fortiche, Micros Animation, MPC, Quantic Dream, Unity Image, Airborne, Atom Hawk, Asobo, CodeSync, Singularity 6, Ghostfire Gaming, and many more. So I can clearly say it works from experience and not just theory. This video is for you if you identify to one of those following situations and you are close to junior level. You struggle to get your first job. You graduated from an art school and the education you received was incomplete or not enough to get you a job, and now you're on your own trying to get into the industry. You are fighting for crumbles on commission pages and you want to get out of that. You have done all the big Gumroad tutorials you can imagine, yet for some reason you lack a little something to get hired and you can't know what it is. You already work in a small studio, but it's miles away from your true goal and you want to join bigger and most prestigious studios. Or else, you are still learning art but you want a solid strategy for when you will have to apply. All good? With that being said, before we start, allow me to quickly introduce myself. So, my name is Timothée Maton, you can call me Tim. I'm 28 from France, as you might have guessed from my accent, please bear with me. I'm a senior concept artist and an art director in the AAA video game industry, an illustrator for TTRPGs, and an art mentor and teacher. I have been working in the AAA industry since 2016, but before that, I was a massive academic failure. I was the worst student in my art class, and almost none of the art teachers were believing in me. It's not that I had no skills, it's just that the school was not welcoming the new techniques and expectations of the industry. They were teaching quote-unquote their way of doing art, which is the only way according to them, and on my side I was already focusing on the more modern techniques like 3D and photo bashing. I mean, it was brand new back in 2015. Now I know it's the standard, but at the time it was brand new. I also wanted to specialize into AAA environment design, while the school again wanted to impose their style and process to all their students. Here is the school report from my last trimester I did in school. It's in French, sorry, so I blurred the names of the teacher to not dox them, and I translated the comments in English. You can pause the video for 10 seconds to read the translations, but overall, it's not very good. When my parents received it, I got a call from my dad. He was furious, and my dad never gets angry at me. They were not aware yet I had quit school, and they were shocked. And the only thing I managed to say to my dad was something like, "Dad, please, can you do something for me? I want you to take a photo of that report and keep it, because one day it will become a fun story." And as you might guess, my dad was pissed. Eventually, I dropped out of school and I kept working on AAA environment design with these emerging techniques. I got guidance from a former teacher of mine, the only one who believed in me, and 6 months after dropping out, at the end of 2016, I landed my first job ever at Ubisoft, while all my classmates were still at school doing their final year. Since then, I have been working for a lot of companies. Ubisoft, Quantic Dream, Netflix UK, Share Creators, NetEase, Eden Games, Free Range Games, and many more. I have worked for projects like Steep, Riders Republic, Lord of the Rings Rise to War, Lord of the Rings Return to Moria, some Total War Warhammer project, and for many Dungeons and Dragons related books. Currently, I am working for Eden Games at the moment I'm recording that video as a senior concept artist. I have also been teaching at schools like Pelco, Inov, Brassart, New Age Paris. And speaking of art school, I have a funny anecdote for you. The school asked 2 of my classmates to repeat a year because they were not quote-unquote good enough according to the school. It's quite funny because one of them ended up getting hired at Ubisoft straight out of school, and the other one got hired at Dontnod and Micros Animation immediately after school too. Another of my friends was colorblind and the school was not believing in him. And now he's working at Fortiche Prod on Arcane at the moment. And to me that's a very intriguing pattern. We were far from being the best at school. The school was not willing to bet on us. And yet, amongst all the class, we are the ones with the careers which started the fastest and are the most established today. And some of the students who are considered amongst the best in our class are still struggling even today, almost 7 years after. So the natural question is, what made the difference? And the answer is our portfolio. For the best student in our class, their portfolio was exactly what the school wanted all of us to do. And in the same portfolio, you could see baby superheroes in the style of Tim Burton, a Disney Art Challenge submission, then a set of realistic environment design from a workshop they did, then some stylized character design from another workshop, and so on and so on. And on our side, as we were not the most academic students, we just wanted to do what we wanted. And eventually, my portfolio was focused exclusively on realistic environment design in the style of The Division or The Last of Us, at least as best as I could. And I got hired at Ubisoft. Same for the portfolio of my friend who also got hired at Ubisoft. My other friend's portfolio was tailored for animation and he started at Boulder Media in Dublin. And finally, my last friend's portfolio was tons of environment and character designs in a super painterly and semi-realistic way with muted color palettes, and he started at Dontnod because it was very close to Life is Strange. I don't know about you, but personally I start to see a pattern here. On one hand, you could sense it was student work, with not that much personal intent behind, with a lot of issues tied to student work, like being a jack of all trades and a master of none, or just the student not really enjoying the subject and we can feel it. And also, of course, at the end of the year, you get 20 kids on the market searching for jobs with exactly the same portfolio at exactly the same time. And on the other hand, you had 4 kids' portfolios trying as best as they could to match company style and process. And while of course it was not perfect at all, at least we were specialized and focusing on one main thing we could do well, and people could feel that we liked what we did. Also, when we got on the market, all portfolios were completely different, so there was no concurrence between all of us. And next, in 2017 when I started teaching, and since then it has always been the same observation. Those who were clearly tailoring their work towards a specific specialty, a specific set of companies that are coherent between each other, a specific style, were having way easier times to get hired than the very studious and academic students applying with student work. And even the former classmates I had who were doing student work and then were still at school, they had to redo their portfolio from scratch, and then and only then it was when they started to get hired. All of this brings us to a clear conclusion. Breaking news, get ready. For most artists, getting hired in the industry is hard. Yeah, shocking, I know. And to assess how catastrophic the hiring success is in the industry, you just have to look at 2 things. The dozens of thousands of artists fighting for underpaid commission online, and you might be part of them, or the explosion of demand for mentorship and online teaching done by pros and not schools. And you can also look at the thousands of unhappy artists graduating out of art school every year who are unable to get a job and pay back their student loans. Again, you might be one of them right now. And it exposed that generally, for most of us artists, when we are starting, we suck at business. We are focused on learning and doing art because we are passionate about it, but it's only half of what is required to make it to the industry. When I worked at Ubisoft, we were finishing working on Steep and starting to explore what Riders Republic was looking like. The company was hiring and we were only 3 concept artists, and we could spend a lot of time with our lead watching him review applications. And oh boy, sometimes the company was receiving like 50 applications per day for a junior concept artist role. Some applications were already filtered out by the HR, but still, we had at least 10 to 15 portfolios to be reviewed per day for weeks. No man, it was sad. And don't get me wrong, most of the time it had nothing to do with the technique. For some of them it was, of course, but for most of the applications, technique was good enough. 95% of the application could be categorized in these 8 following categories, and I'm pretty sure it will sound familiar to you. 1. A portfolio full of student work, jack of all trades, master of none. As I told you, 8 different subjects, and we are shifting from baby superheroes in the style of Tim Burton to a Disney art challenge submission, then Arcane inspired piece, then some realistic environment, etc. And there's a lot of problems with that. First, it screams I'm a student and not a pro. Then we don't know what the person wants and likes to do. Then we don't have any idea of how imaginative the person can be. Also, we don't know if the person is able to stick to the same subject for an extended period of time, because video game productions can take years after all. And also probably 90+% of the portfolio won't fit the style and process of the company. Next kind of portfolio, I love this one. A portfolio that looks like a collection of Gumroad tutorial. And you can know exactly which tutorial they watched for every piece because every piece looks like a clone of what was showed in the demo for the tutorial. Again, there's a lot of problems. We don't know if the person can use the knowledge of these tutorials on something else than what was showed in the demo. The person cannot put what they learned at the service of creative works. We have no idea of how imaginative the person can be. We don't know if the person is able to stick to the same subject for an extended period of time. And probably 90+% of the portfolio won't fit the style and process of the company again. Next one, I'm going to make some enemies with that one. A portfolio full of fan art. It's like the latest ArtStation trends, but 6 months too late. Famous artist clone. Okay, you did a Last of Us 2 inspired piece, then an Arcane inspired piece, but the hype is gone now, and that's not what the company is doing anyways. I have nothing against fan art, don't get me wrong, and if you want to do some, no problem. But in a portfolio, this might feel a bit like, notice me, senpai, please. And if you treat some companies like stars, they will treat you like fans. Again, the problems are, if the fan artworks are about concurrent project, that's probably not the smartest move. Also, can this person create something on their own, or are they just following along? Also, fan art is cool, but it does not look pro in a portfolio. Your portfolio needs to display what you can create, not someone else. Again, we have no idea of how imaginative this person can be. We don't know if the person is able to stick to the same subject for an extended period of time. Why hiring a cheap copy of whatever artist has been copied when we can get the original artist instead? And again, probably 90%+ of the portfolio won't fit the style and process of the company. Same problem. Next, especially for concept art and illustration, the study portfolio. Okay, yeah, you studied stuff and you put them in your portfolio. What about production work? Again, a lot of problems. Studies are for training and eventually collecting likes on ArtStation, but not for production work. It's out of touch with the job's expectation. We are not expecting you to study, but to produce stuff. Again, we ask ourselves, can the person create something, tell a story and solve visual problems, or just copy well? Again, we have no idea of how imaginative the person can be. We don't know if the person is able to stick to the same project for an extended period of time. And probably 90%+ of the portfolio won't fit the style and process of the company again. Next kind of portfolio is very painful and very subtle. It's the kind of portfolio where they are avoiding the hard task all the time. So it's like only character design with T-pose, or portraits only, but never a full character. Or environment design with only front views and no perspective. Or nature only and zero architecture. Again, it creates a lot of problems. This profile does not cover the full spectrum of what can be expected from the industry. The reviewer can doubt about the technical abilities and creative abilities of the person because it's only the easy stuff and not the hard stuff, and producing work is hard. And also it's out of touch, again, with the professional requirements and company style. Next one is kind of okay, but it's a bit painful. It's like good enough, but out of touch with what is needed for the production. An example is like someone applying for Riders Republic with a style tailored towards Blizzard, or an environment design portfolio for character design heavy jobs. Sounds familiar? I'm pretty sure you have applied to a position like this. It's okay, we have all done it out of desperation because we were hungry and trying to get our foot in the industry, but it does not work because, again, it does not fit what the company needs. It shows a potential lack of research about the company, so they might question if you are applying to just this company or 50 at the same time. And finally, and more simply, most of the case, it's amazing work, but just not what the project needs. And that's fine. Sounds familiar, guys? Yeah, me too. I was the Gumroad nerd, actually. As you can see, we can categorize portfolios into stereotypes pretty easily, and that's exactly what people reviewing your portfolio will do when you apply. Even more if they have dozens, if not hundreds of applications to review every day. The truth is that they just don't have the time to spend 2 hours figuring out all the intricacies of your process. Sometimes they just open up your portfolio, after 3 seconds they have an opinion about it and they already closed it and moved to the next candidate. Or they got intrigued and decided to dive deeper if your work is catching their attention and matching what they are looking for immediately. The TLDR is, if when they open your portfolio it does not scream I am a pro or this person could do the job, it's over, delete email, next candidate. And this is how months of work can be made irrelevant in a second. All of this with your technique being good enough. Yeah, I know, this is not funny. So how do we remedy that? To remedy that situation with one thing only, a targeted portfolio, tailored to match companies' expectations and needs. And before you stop me, I know that when we are looking for a job, especially the first one, we are overwhelmed by strong desires. We need a job to get the recognition from the peers we crave so much. Also to get the confirmation that these years of effort sacrificing everything for art were worth it. Also, to get our parents and friends to stop worrying about us, aka my son wants to be an illustrator, to be financially stable, and to pay back our student loans. This is vital, I get it. But in order to get a job the most efficient way, you need to stop thinking about what you want for the moment and start considering what companies want from you, especially what they want from a junior. So it leads us to the next question. What do they want from a junior? To answer that, we need to understand what is the main problem companies encounter with juniors. Juniors have, by definition, little to no experience in the industry. They need to be trained extensively before becoming autonomous. They need to be taken care of by a lead or senior artist to reach that autonomy. And that lead and senior artist, they have other things to do. They have responsibilities and overall they cost a lot of money. In other words, to train juniors, it costs a lot of time and resources for the company. In other words, for as long as they are getting trained, a junior is likely to cost more money than what they bring to the company. In other words, a junior costs a lot of money before it becomes autonomous and profitable. And as a conclusion, a junior is a massive gamble of money, time, and resources for the company. And that's why companies are so picky about juniors, because they don't like to lose money. And I know, before you jump on my throat, we are artists, we like D&D and video games and such, that's okay. But nevertheless, the industry is still a business. And the goal of any business is to make a lot of money. Yeah, breaking news, I know. And this brings us back to the main question, what do they want from a junior? And with that context, the answer is easy. To need as little training as possible to become autonomous and profitable as fast as possible. And in order to show that, the only shot you have is with your portfolio. The more you can tell, hey guys, I understand what you are expecting from me and you won't have to train me for 6 months to do what you are doing, the higher your chances of getting hired. The less they have to train you, the faster you become profitable to them and they like it. And that's why your portfolio needs to be targeted at them and properly tailored to match what they are doing and expecting in terms of style, subject, and process. Of course, with finesse to not do fan art. For pros, it might be obvious. For others, it might spark confusion. But overall, as we say, the thousands of artists struggling to get a job is proving that this framework is not widespread. Looks easier said than done? You might be right, but let's give you an actionable plan on how to craft a banger targeted portfolio. You have 5 things to do. Number 1, you identify the companies that are accessible to you and you understand their expectation, which is the style, the process, the tools they use, and the content to be created in production. So you pick companies you like, you make sure they hire juniors. If they don't mention it, make a guess with the work of artists working there you find on ArtStation. You understand their art direction and you build a reference Bible accordingly. You figure their process and tools and you study what they are producing at work, especially junior work. A quick tip, aim at multiple companies with similar styles, subject, and process, and your portfolio will be an average of these. This way you broaden the scope of application you can do. Number 2, you compare yourself to the pros working there and you adapt your work to match theirs as best as you can. Ask yourself these questions like, how do I do it? How do they do it? Then, what are the main differences? And what are the 3 most impactful and drastic changes I need to do to close most of the gap? Let me tell you what to precisely compare. We start with the visual codes, so the scale and size, the subject, the amount of details, and the foreground and background content, etc. Then the references they use. Where do they find them? How do they mix them, etc. Then the composition. This one is very important. It's mainly the camera angles, the field of view, the recurring elements, the main shapes used, and such. Then you ask yourself the same about colors and light, so the type of lighting they use, the color palettes, the atmospheric perspective used, the fog used, and the color and the value range, etc. Next, the thought process. What do they want to show? Is it iconic or descriptive compositions? What is the story behind the design? How do they convey the story? What kind of mood emotion are in the picture? How do they tell the story, etc. Then about the tools and softwares. Are they using 3D or not? Are they using photo bashing or not? Is it full painting or not? What are the software used, etc. Then you ask yourself about the process, the A to Z process they use. Is design separated from rendering? How is detail added? How is the rendering done? What do they do for polishing? What is the amount of polish they want, etc. And finally, the presentation, so the aspect ratio they use, the location of the logo, if any, is there text or not, is there a mood board or not, are there references presented in the work or not, etc. I know it might sound very intimidating and hard to do. It's not hard, it's just a bit long and it breaks the ego to have to compare ourselves with seniors. And again, you do not need to apply 100% of what they are doing because they are seniors with maybe 10 to 15 years of experience and we are juniors, so it will be completely unfair to do a comparison. But if you implement just 30% of seniors' abilities in your work, it tends to be enough to reach above junior level. And that's the goal. Next step, you create a portfolio that is close enough to this company's work without doing fan art. So you pick a specialty and something complementary. The specialty will be like 70 to 80% of your portfolio, and the complementary thing will be 20 to 30% of your portfolio. An example with an environment design portfolio, 70% will be environment and 30% will be props. So on a 20 pages portfolio, that will be like 15 to 16 pages of environment and 4 to 5 pages of props. Of course, the structure of your portfolio will really depend on your job. So for concept art, it will be more research and design, a bit less of polished work. For illustration, it's the contrary, with a lot of polished work and still a bit of sketches, but less. And for cinematographic, it's a lot of shot design, often in sequence, and still a bit of research and design work, but a bit less than concept art. And same for 3D jobs, animation, VFX. You can just transpose those principles to the medium you use to show your work. Another thing for the portfolio subject, pick something simple, like a book, an old story, something like this. There's no need to reinvent the wheel or to create a brand new IP from scratch. Pick something that is grounded into reality, at least for juniors. You pick just 2 or 3 moments, it's enough, and you plan your entire portfolio from the beginning. This way you can get references for everything before you start designing, and then there's no friction remaining when designing the portfolio itself. And here is a pro tip, especially for character design and props for the polished pieces. Use 3-point lighting. Make sure that there is one sharp and direct light amongst the 3 of them. Use ambient occlusion, and a little bonus, you can use glossy and more reflective materials to show diversity in terms of materials. Okay, next step. Optimize every stage of the hiring process. The goal here is to reduce friction and opportunities for the recruiters to disqualify you, and all of that you can have control over it. Let's start with the portfolio presentation. If it's in PDF, make sure it's less than 8 megabytes total, so 1440p is good in terms of resolution. They won't spend too much time on it, and they won't try to zoom to the pixel on every piece. They don't have the time. Also, try to put as little text and clutter on your pieces as possible. It's like show, don't tell. Start your portfolio with your best piece to catch the attention immediately, and you end your portfolio with the second best piece to end on something positive. And you open every quote-unquote chapter with the polished piece for it. It means that for every big subject you have in your portfolio, the 2 or 3 chapters we were mentioning before, you start with the polished piece and then you show the design to dive into your mind. And if it's an online portfolio, it's exactly the same. You start with your header, or as soon as we arrive on your website or whatever, we see your best piece. And then every time we click on a project, we see the polished piece and then the design. Then about your resume. First thing, make sure to have an easy to find and clickable link towards your portfolio. Every time we open up a portfolio, we are looking for that link. And if it's not clickable, it's too much of a hassle to copy and paste or just to type 50 different random characters to access your portfolio. And you will get disqualified on that just because, again, the person doesn't have the time to type 50 random characters. Besides that link, the most important part is the past experience. So you need to make it visible immediately. It needs to be the first thing we see after your link. And finally, you are an artist, so make your resume looks kind of nice. Don't overdo it, of course, but just something on canva.com, like a basic template, it's enough. Next is about the cover letter. To be honest, barely anyone reads these, but just in case, especially for big companies that tend to be a bit more HR heavy, make sure to make it personal to the company so they don't think that you sent the same letter to 50 different companies. So do a bit of research about them, and that's pretty much it. Just two things: do not pick a ready-made online model for the letter, and do not ask ChatGPT to write one because they will fill it. Next, about the first interview. This is mainly to discover who you are and to make sure you are congruent with what you have said in your CV, in your resume, and in your portfolio. Also, make sure to always have an elevator pitch to introduce yourself in the most concise and efficient way. The goal of that first interview is to be congruent with what you have said in your portfolio and in your resume. So do your research about the company, and if it's a Zoom call, make sure that your gear works perfectly before the call and that your background is pristine clean, because they might judge you on that. Next is if you have an art test to do. It's to allow the company to see several things. 1, if your portfolio work is legit or not. 2, to see if you are able to deliver work that matches their style and process. Your portfolio should have already proven that, but again, it's all about being congruent with your portfolio and what you can deliver right now. And 3, to see if you get it about what they want and need in the pitch. And again, this is all about showing production work. 2 things about the artist. First, this might be obvious for a lot of you, but I still see some artists that are doing whatever they want. You need to respect the subject to the letter. If you try to bend the rules just because you don't want to conform to it, you will get disqualified immediately. Then make sure to deliver in time. Again, this is a given, but some people deliver it like 5 minutes too late and it's already too late and you are out. Then, unless asked otherwise, make sure to have a proper presentation based on what you saw from the artist working at that company already. And finally, if you have any question, if anything is unclear, ask them quickly after having received the brief, and ask all your questions in a single email. And of course, don't put like 50 questions, just like 2 or 3 of them. Let's move to the second interview. If you are at that stage, it's a very good sign. It means that they think you can do it. One final push and do not mess it up. That's all. First thing, you absolutely need to do your research about how much you can ask in terms of money. So go on Glassdoor and check the salary range that is being described there. Also, one quick tip, at least in European countries, they can hardly refuse to give you at least 3x the price of a small studio in the town that they are located. Otherwise, you cannot even get an apartment. If you are working remotely, of course, that's different. But if you are asked to move there, where their office is, they have no choice but to agree. And finally, this is the most important thing, do not ever mention that you have student debt or any kind of debt, or that you absolutely need that job, because it establishes a dependency relationship between you and them, and they are in the position of strength. And saying that is the recipe for disaster and for horrendous work conditions. Also, for any interviews, prepare the most common questions, like how much do you want? We talked about it just before. What makes you qualified for the job, or what do you bring to the table? This is to destabilize you. What are your qualities and default? Again, this is to destabilize you, and this is a common question. Pro tips, by the way, do not put a quality as a default, like I am to something. And for the default, tell them how to solve that problem in advance. This way you diffuse the problem. Also, prepare a simple, do you have any question? It's generally at the end of the interview. And if it's a big company, prepare answer for behavioral interview questions. The bigger the company, the more HR heavy it is, and those are HR questions. It's like, how many tennis balls can you fit into a limousine? Or if you were an animal, what would it be and why? On Google, you can just type behavioral interview questions and see the list of the most frequently asked questions like this. And finally, about the contract, read the whole document entirely and thoroughly. If anything is unclear, ask for clarification. If you have someone in your family or in your acquaintances that is working in law enforcement, that's the moment to talk to them. Do not sign something you do not agree 100% with, because if you sign for it, it's written and you are engaged with it. A pro tip, if you want more chances to get hired, you need to go to industry gathering events like THU, Lightbox, IAMAG, IFCC, Concept 101, etc. This is way better because you are in person speaking to another person, not a faceless email address being sent to an inbox. One final tip when you are done with your first portfolio and you apply, you need to work on a second portfolio. When you apply with your first portfolio, time will pass before you get answers. You need to use it well. By the time you are done with your second portfolio, maybe 3 to 4 months after, you reapply everywhere again and you keep going at it. It's just a numbers game and volume negates luck, and at some point you will get a job. And an additional tip about that portfolio, make sure it complements the first portfolio you have done. This way you can cover more companies and projects and you can apply to more different places. So, today we talked about how to pick the right companies and become experts about these, how to close the technical gap between you and the pros there, how to craft a relevant portfolio tailored to the companies you are aiming at, how to reduce the chances of getting disqualified during the hiring process, and how to make sure you can consistently apply with more and more qualitative work until it finally works. And with all of this stacked together at equal technique, you get a massively unfair advantage over your concurrents when applying. It worked for me, it worked for my friends, it worked for dozens of students I got in the past, it works for hundreds of artists in the industry, pretty much everyone in the industry, so it will work for you too. Choosing the right companies to start with allowed me to develop my professional expertise. Figuring out how to close the gap with them gave me the keys to reach and exceed junior level. Crafting a properly tailored portfolio got me in touch with Ubisoft. Not messing up during the hiring process worked to get me hired at Ubisoft. And producing consistently new and better work allowed me to not have to apply even once over the last 4 years. In short, can you see why understanding companies' expectations, aka the professional part of art, is a skill worth having? And this skill might be the missing element between where you are and wherever you want to go as an artist. And now you might have some questions. You may ask, what if I'm living in a country with no big companies in it, and it happens a lot? In that case, having a targeted portfolio is even more important to you to get foreign companies to help you to move or work remotely. There's a good news though, since the pandemic, working remotely is way more common than before, so it's a bit easier. And also, if you find yourself in a low-income country like Philippines, Greece, Mexico and such, international rates will allow you to live very well in your country. Next question you may have is, what if I don't have the technical level to consider applying yet? And for this I have good news and I have bad news. Let's start with the bad news. If you wait to quote-unquote be ready, and for the right moment to apply, you will never apply. The stars will never align and you will wait for years before your opportunity comes. I see a lot of young artists falling into the trap of, when I'm finishing learning this kind of skill or this tutorial, then I will be ready to apply. But the problem is, once you finish learning something, it highlights a new set of problems and you never get out of learning stage. And eventually you never apply because you keep telling yourself, I need to learn this, then this, then this to be ready. At some point, you need to apply, guys. And it was exactly the same for me. When I wanted to apply at Ubisoft, my mom gave me 6 weeks to finish my portfolio, not a single additional day. Was it perfect when I sent it? Absolutely not. Was I satisfied when I sent it? Not at all. But it was done, and it was enough to get hired. Let's move to the good news though. We tend to drastically overestimate the required level to apply. What we see on Instagram and ArtStation, it's mainly the super sexy and polished stuff. And we very rarely see the rough and not so sexy work done at work for production. This problem with ArtStation and Instagram leads us to set extremely high expectations to enter the industry, while it's not the case. And while it's still high, it's not as impossible as we might think. Also, juniors rarely show their work because 1, they are shy, and 2, once they are able to share their work from a project, they generally are not juniors anymore. So it's very hard to find juniors actually sharing junior work. Also, another good news, technique is less hard to learn today thanks to all the new tools and softwares we have. Think Blender, Megascans and such. Let's be honest, today technique is just an expectation. It's not an argument playing in your favor anymore, it's just required. What matters the most is your ability to design elements, implement storytelling in your pictures, and understand what is expected from you now. And finally, if you still need to learn the technical parts, you can get my free course and it's going to teach you everything you need to close the gap. And if you join the Artnest Discord, link in the free course by the way, you will find even more help and guidance to help you level up. To get the free course, go on theartnest.academy/free-course. And I want to double down on that tip. Just do the comparison with pros work as described previously. It works. You implementing just 30% of what they are doing is enough to catapult your work above junior level. And if you don't trust my word, let's trust the picture then. Let's have a look. This is Bram Wilmot, one of my former students. Look at the before and after. The design is night and day. It tells a great stories and conveys a lot of personality. And we have Quentin, incredible level up in terms of photo bashing just by learning how to do photo bashing properly by analyzing how pros are doing it. Then we have Jess, again, incredible level up just by learning how pros at Ubisoft, CD Projekt Red or Lion Studio are doing it. I have so much stuff from Jess. She's doing incredible progress. Massive thumbs up. As always, the before is on the left, the after on the right. And then we have Versus. Look at that. I don't need to say anything, it's mind-blowing. This is how you transition from the commission hell limbo, fighting from crumbles online on commission pages to junior level in the industry. And if you apply what we discussed today, you will reach the industry. However, it would be unethical to promise everyone will get a job with 100% certainty. That's because there are too many variables when it comes to getting a job. And this strategy needs to be adjusted and fine-tuned to everyone based on their individual situation and goals. I know that, so here's what we are going to do. Even if we add a full day together instead of 40 minutes, it's going to be impossible to give you all that you need for every step of the process. No matter how good anyone is, one 40-minute video is not going to change your life. And I know very well how hard it can be for you aspiring artist close to junior level, crushing yourselves against the doors of the industry to make all the right choices. So, with that framework in your possession, you have two choices now. You can either apply it on your own and it will work if you do everything correctly and if you adjust it for your situation. Or else, you can get extensive guidance to craft the right targeted portfolio on your first try and get hired in months instead of years. And in that case, you need more than that. And while everything I've just given you today is valuable, it's just the tip of the iceberg. And on my side, I had two choices for this video. I could either walk away at the end and hope that you can figure everything out on your own, or else I can be more active and responsible for your education and create a win-win situation for both you and me. And I decided to take the second option. So, here is the result of 3 years of works, trials, and adjustment, writing over 120 pages for it, condensing everything I've learned from my horrendous years in art school, 6 years of teaching and mentoring, and 7 years in the industry. And this is with tremendous pleasure that I want to introduce you to Portfolio Master Key. Here's the promise. I work with you until you get a job for as long as you do the work, to craft a banger targeted portfolio from start to finish and join the entertainment industry in months instead of years. If you are close to junior level, but for some reasons big companies constantly reject your application, and actually you likely know why now, or else you graduated from art school and realize that what you have been taught is not enough to get a job, or else you even landed a job on a small company already, but you are frustrated and you want to move to a bigger and more prestigious studio, and you want exhaustive guidance to do that final push to reach industry level and start working on big game and movie project as efficiently as possible, then you are someone I want to work with. You will be taken by the hand to learn how to plan your entire career roadmap, know exactly which companies to start with and how to target them perfectly. Become an expert about these specific companies' expectations. Skyrocket your technical level above junior level without having to watch tutorials. Know how and where to learn the skills you lack. Perfectly achieve the art direction style and process of the companies you are aiming at. Pick the ideal portfolio subject tailored to the companies you are aiming at. Plan your portfolio so it ticks all the requirement boxes of the companies. Save a ton of time and headache, allowing you to produce your portfolio as fast and as consistently as possible. Eliminate 99% of the opportunities recruiters have to disqualify you. Gain an unfair advantage over 95+% of your concurrents during the hiring process at equal level. Eliminate a ton of stress about the hiring process, interviews, art tests, negotiations, and so on. Increase your rates and salary you can ask right from the start and climb the hierarchy. Apply the same framework to every stage of your career regardless if it's your first job or a senior position. Protect yourself from potential crunch, inappropriate behavior, and drama in the corporate world, and much more. And also after these 5 weeks, you get feedback when crafting your entire portfolio from start to finish. You get lifetime access to my private community with dozens of cherry-picked, hardworking former mentees working on achieving the same goals as you or who already made it to the industry and are willing to help you. You get access to additional workshops and demos we do in the private community and compile it into a massive video database, including replays of the group session of all the former mentees. You get access to all my future courses and educational content for free. And of course, there is a lot more. So let's summarize everything you get. You get premium mentorship with 6+ hours of video course to go fully in depth about getting your first job. You got 5 weeks of mentorship, 2 sessions per week for a total of 10 sessions. You get an individual step-by-step action plan tailored to your career goals. You get follow-up and feedback for your entire portfolio crafting from start to finish. You get follow-up and feedback to help you nail every step of the hiring process. And you get follow-up and feedback also to help you negotiate the best rates and salary you can get. And of course, you always get more content like private community access with hardworking, highly active artists, additional workshops, and you can suggest what you want in them actually. You get former and future replays of the mentorship group sessions and all my next educational content given to you for free. And again, I want to repeat on that. If you are allowed into the mentorship, I work with you until you get a job. This is everything I wish I had when I was on my own, alone in my student room trying to get hired. This is the ultimate industry door opening program. So, if you want to join or get more information, you can go to theartnest.academy/mentorship. Or else, if you want to apply directly, you can use the application form down below this video. The spots are heavily limited to ensure quality. So if you don't want to be on the waiting list for too long, apply right now, folks. Thanks a lot for watching this video, folks. Let's get you a job and see you in the Art Nest.